Hi, everybody. So I guess it's 8 o'clock now, so we'll probably just crack on and get started. So it's great to be chatting to you this evening. I'm just looking through some pages here because somebody asked me what my favourite book title was on the Barkley. So I guess I might as well start with that question. And we've got quite a few questions that have already been sent in, so I can start with some of those, and then just feel free to just pop your questions in the chat as we go along, because that's probably the best thing to do. And it might be that they're very similar to some of the ones that have already been sent in which case I'll hopefully answer them both in one go. So to just start with a bit of fun, one of the questions, as I said, was what my favourite book title was from this year's Barkley. So there were various, I don't think I've even looked through them all, but here we've got Hard Times, Hear Me Die, How to Stay Alive in the Woods. I'm not sure if that one was a component of another, maybe that was just one of the chapters. No Easy Day, From Dead to Worse, A Slow Walk to Hell, and Walking on the Happy Side of Misery. So you can see they're all fairly optimistic titles. So, right, great. So I'll just, as I say, just pop your questions in the chat there. I can see people saying hello, so presumably you can type into that. So while you're doing that, I will start answering some more of the questions. Somebody there's just written actually on the subject of running whether I'm planning to write a book soon. Probably not soon, but I think maybe feel like that's something you do when you get old, when you've got lots to write about. So maybe I will at some point. And somebody's asked the question about how much warning did you get about the race date for Barkley? Well, I guess you have to, for international competitors, you have to be able to book flights and so on. So I can leave you to imagine that he does give you enough warning to be able to do that. So somebody's asked, what was my initial feeling of being accepted to participate in this year's Barkley? I guess I was really excited because I already knew that I really wanted to do the race. So when I got a place, I was excited and a bit scared as well, because I sort of knew what, that it was probably going to be very hard, that it was, I guess statistically speaking, I was likely to fail. So, and I also knew that it was going to be, if I was going to really kind of put up the best possible kind of effort there, then I was going to have to train hard over winter. So that's actually a big part of the kind of challenge of it, is putting enough time in training wise before the event. So somebody's asked what was my answer in terms of why I should be allowed to run the Barkley in the essay. I don't think I had kind of one magic answer for anybody to copy. I think I already knew that Laz was kind of interested in me maybe coming to run Barkley, because I think he didn't keep that any secret. After the spine, he said in a few interviews that he would like to see me run Barkley. So I guess I sort of said in my essay that I was keen to run, and I sort of said a bit about myself, but I was hoping that he was already wanting me to go. So hopefully I didn't need to kind of say anything magical to get myself in. Great. Somebody has asked, in terms of terrain, how different was Barkley to the UK fells and mountains, which is something that's already been asked actually in the questions that came in before. So in terms, I think the biggest difference is the woods, because we don't tend to have kind of large sections of woodland in the UK, at least not around me. Not sort of large enough to sort of get lost in up and down hills and up and down. So the hills there at Barkley are steep. And I think there are other areas in the UK where the hills are steep. So I can kind of think of, I can kind of think of a few places, maybe, the name's totally escaping me. And there's places in Yorkshire, I think, where the hills are kind of very steep up and down. I can think of a few places in Wales, and they're not even it's not like they're big, high, they're not sort of really big climbs. It's not like if you're in the Alps or anything like that. They're still only probably, a few hundred meters the climbs up and down. It's just that they're quite steep, the terrain, and then on top of that they're wooded. So that's what I think is the big difference to most of the time when I'm running in the UK, because you're used to running with a big view ahead of you and kind of being able to use the lie of the land to navigate with, whereas that's not really so much the case in the woods. And you're obviously also having to deal with fallen trees in front of you, and the briars and so on that come with woodland undergrowth. So that's probably the kind of biggest difference in terms of terrain. So somebody's asked, hi, I was at Barkley crew and totally missed your coming in after your fun run. And what was the first thing I did to celebrate and to warm up and start recovery? To be honest, after I sort of finished, I don't know, it must have been midnight-ish by the time I finished. And I was kind of pretty sort of wobbly-legged when I first crossed the finish line, just because I'd run quite hard at the very end, because I thought I was going to miss the cutoff for the fun run, because I got a bit lost in the last hour. Actually, I got lost multiple times in the last few hours. So yeah, it was a bit of a sprint. And when I finished across the finish line, I hadn't eaten for about an hour and a half or drunk anything. So my legs were all wobbly from the effort that I'd put in. So I was kind of a bit, a bit shocked that it was all over, and like obviously really happy. So so basically we had an Airbnb in the nearby town of Oak Ridge, and we just went back to that and had like a cup of tea and went to bed. It wasn't very exciting, but we all went out for pizza the day after with quite a few people from the race, which was actually really good, because you're kind of, I mean, I spent a lot of the time running on my own, and afterwards I didn't chat to people, and everybody had sort of gone off to their own, accommodation or houses or whatever. So yeah, it was good to kind of meet up with people and share some of the stories, because everybody's got these like, lots of funny experiences that happen and sort of ridiculous tales, but because everybody disappears off to different parts of the world straight after the race, you don't really get to share those. So it was good to meet up with some of the people that were at the race and kind of sharing that feeling of camaraderie from having been through the same experience together. So that was good. Somebody's asked about the scratches on my legs and whether they're starting to disappear. Actually, they're like pretty much gone. They were just really itchy for a bit when they were going. I still got some bruises. I had like pretty extensive bruises on my arms from falling over a lot, I guess, and putting my arms down. But otherwise, I'm fine. I'm running again now, so I kind of don't feel particularly injured. Somebody's asked, will I apply again? So I think I'm going to try and go back if Laz will have me back, just because it feels a bit like it's unfinished business. The thing is, with Barkley, I get the impression there's so many variables, including the weather. So the kind of 2 days after the race, it snowed, and I don't know, I'm guessing there was like maybe almost a foot of snow in Barkley and in Frozen Head. So if it snowed like that or more than that, I can imagine it would start to be impossible, of course. So I guess you can put in as much training as you like, but there's variables like that you couldn't prepare for. And honestly, the navigation, I mean, I think it would be better next time, because I've done 3 loops already, but whether I would get it right is also unclear. I mean, ideally, I'd be running with someone that knew the course really well, but I don't think you can kind of rely on that happening. If I had a camera and I could have taken one photo from the course, what would it have been? That's a good question. I don't know, possibly sometime. Yeah. I mean, I guess you wouldn't have been able to see much in the night because it was just so wet. So I'm not really sure that you would have got much except a kind of smudge of light across the blackness. So I guess maybe one of the most enjoyable bits, which was probably on the first day when I was kind of fresh and running with company and just really enjoying it. So maybe a sunny bit sometime then. Somebody's asked how much of the event was I actually running and how much was power hiking. A lot of the event is power hiking. I don't think anyone's kind of made any secret about that in the past. The pace is quite slow, but as I say, there's quite a lot of ascent in it. So it's not that it's necessarily easy slow, but you're going quite slowly. There are a few sections of running, but not not much, and by the third loop, I wasn't doing that well at running those even. So the bit when you come into camp and you get leaving camp again, if you then those bits you can run there when everybody's watching. when you feel like you have to run because everybody's watching. Do I feel like I could have carried on if I'd made the cutoff? That's an interesting question. So obviously I kind of pushed it quite hard at the end to get into the finish, but I actually feel certainly from a sleep point of view, I definitely felt that I could have gone on for another 24 hours. I wasn't particularly like tired sleep wise. And I think that if I got the kind of navigation right and kind of the conditions weren't too terrible, I think that 5 loops would be possible. But whether I'd ever be able to like have the kind of everything come together at the same time to do that, I'm not sure, but I think I'd like to give it a try. And then somebody's asked, now that I've run it, and I think this was another question that came in before, now that I've run it, would I change my training at all, if at all? So I think it was the training I did to kind of break it down. So I'm trained by Damien Hall. So we kind of, I guess, chatted a bit beforehand about the training that I needed to do. And we sort of agreed that it was going to have a lot more. Compared, for example, with the UTMB, it has, significantly more ascent than the UTMB. So for anybody that kind of is aware of that, then just kind of use that as a benchmark. So basically what I did was to kind of get that sort of ascent in a kind of limited distance, because the distance you're covering is not that big. Then I did lots of reps up kind of the steepest hillsides I could find, and because the weather was really bad in January and February and I was kind of getting blown over when I went out for my training sessions, I kind of ended up limited to the slopes that I sort of felt safe to train on, because I didn't want to go anywhere exposed. So I ended up doing a lot of reps up and down, like for example the hill Castle Law in the Pentlands, which was really mind-numbing. Actually, it really wasn't like I usually just enjoy running for the joy of it, and this was probably the first time I've kind of experienced it was a slightly different sort of training, because I was training just for one thing, with the kind of one thing in mind. And I guess I did that for the first time for the spine, but then I still sort of allowed myself to go out and sort of enjoy the hills. But in this case, it felt partly like I had to do it to get the ascent, but partly because I was also felt like I was training that mental training that mental resilience for when it felt awful, to be able to kind of shrug it off and say, it's all right, I can, just bury myself and keep going and doing this thing that's not actually that enjoyable. So I guess I actually trained specifically hoping to do that. But in terms of kind of anything that I would do differently, I guess my plan is to try and do some orienteering in the next year, because I don't think I'm a terrible navigator, but I do think that it would have been good if I was like really on it for Barkley. And whilst I would love to think that I might get to run with an experienced veteran next time, I don't think that you could rely on that. There's too many variables, and they might, even if you're running with someone strong, they might end up dropping out. So I'd like to be able to do it myself, and be able to kind of rely on myself. And for that, I think I would like to, be really strong at navigation. And for that, I can't really think of a better way to do it than just to orienteer for the next year. So I'm planning to do some orienteering, basically. It'll be good for me long term anyway. Make me better for mountain marathons and stuff. Somebody's that's a really nice comment from Michael there, saying that it's somebody that I was by chatting to somebody on Monday. Yes, anyway, he ran a bit of time with Michael, I think. So somebody's written, do you ever suffer from self-doubt? And if so, do you have any tips on how to deal with self-doubt when training or for a new big challenge? I definitely have self-doubt. I think sometimes it's good to have self-doubt, because it kind of keeps you in check. Certainly my career, I definitely have self-doubt in my career as a vet. But I tell myself that I'd rather have a vet a doctor treating me that had self-doubt and wanted to look things up and question, than somebody that was so confident that they never thought to check anything. So I guess that's my view on the career. In terms of running, I have self-doubt. I think you develop confidence with time with doing more things. I guess I kind of have confidence in my sort of long-term stamina, and in that, I guess that tenaciousness. I guess I know that I've got that to kind of fall back on. I feel like what the thing that I guess I feel like I'm kind of good at is to just sort of keeping going. And I think I saw that on Barkley and Loop 2 when loads of the field dropped out, and I was just kind of, it was a bit like the hare and the tortoise, and I just kept going. So I think that's probably what I'm good at. So maybe that's where I, that's where I do have self-belief in that, in kind of that element of things. So, and do I have any tips on how to deal with self-doubt when training for a big new challenge? I think the best thing would probably just be to do the training, because I think if you've kind of got that in the bank, that was good to go to Barkley knowing that I'd done the training, like I'd put in the hours, I'd done as much as I could. Like I knew that I couldn't have done more than that, given the fact that I had like small children to deal with and or to spend time with and work. So I think if you've got that base to fall back on, then you can kind of know that you've done the best you can, and that'll give you confidence in itself. So somebody's asked, how did I train for the unknown? If that's something you can train for. Well, I guess, and that kind of answers some other questions that people have asked, is that I think that kind of I've run several mountain marathons over, like many mountain marathons over the last, I guess, 10 years plus. And they're probably like almost the best thing that you can do kind of to prepare, in the sense that you don't get the map till the kind of the morning of, or just before you start. So there's that kind of unknown of that. And then you've got the navigation, and then you've got everything, the fact that you're kind of on your feet for quite a long time, and you're carrying lots on your back, and you've got the weather conditions if you've run the for example. So I think running elite and like long score classes in the mountain marathons over the years is actually a really good experience. I'd say it's really actually quite similar to that, except for the fact that you're in forest, and that probably you're doing more ascent, but otherwise it's quite similar to a mountain marathon in many ways. Somebody's asked, did I speak to Nikki Spinks beforehand? Well, I kind of, so obviously I chatted to Nikki because we're friends anyway. And, I ran Trigger in January when I saw her then. But there's kind of like you don't really want to talk about Barkley too much outside the event. So even now I'm not going to kind of give people specific information about anything, because it's just not really the done thing. So I didn't even really want to ask too much. In some ways it was nice to kind of discover some things just when I got there, as a race virgin, so to speak. Somebody's asked, how do I find time to recover with my training load, balancing family and work? Any tips and advice? That's actually interesting, because I recall Emily Fosberg saying something along those lines, in that having a family, the biggest challenge is actually recovery. And in some ways that's true, because like you can make time to train, or at least somehow make time to train, but the biggest challenge is the recovery, and particularly sleep at night. So any tips, I guess? I'm not sure that I have any tips for that particular thing. I mean, we just kind of whatever works for you. I mean, my son, who's like not 2 yet, still joins us in bed in the middle of the night when he wakes up, because that's the way we all get most sleep. And then my daughter tends to come in by the morning. So I guess for example, things like that. So did lots of bed sharing with him and breastfed him at night and things, just to be able to carry on sleeping. Other than that, I can't really think of any specific tips for the recovery. I guess I like to swim outdoors in cold water. I'm not sure how much that is genuinely kind of a recovery thing, but I like doing it, so I do it. And I also think actually that I've been doing strength training for the last, I don't know, year and a half maybe, since I had my son, with like a group Coach D's called, and we kind of do an online class. And I think actually doing regular strength training is good in terms of recovery, because I think, I think you kind of more balanced, your muscles are stronger, and actually you recover better after events, or maybe you just don't kind of injure yourself as much as you're doing it because you're stronger. So that's kind of an indirect advice about recovery, and maybe something that you can do proactively. somebody's asked about how I feel about all the media about me being the first woman to do X, how and whether I would prefer it to not be about gender or my ability, but about my ability, or do I enjoy promoting women's sport? I mean, I'm not really that bothered either way, to be honest. I mean, like I definitely don't seek out the media attention. I kind of do it because I feel like people seem to say it inspires them, and then I sort of feel, especially when you told that you inspired kids and stuff, I feel like you have a platform and you're kind of in this privileged position to be able to do so. But from my point of view, I really couldn't kind of care less if I was famous or not. So I don't really mind. And I think it's really a positive thing to kind of give women maybe the confidence and maybe kind of be an inspirational woman for others, especially as we know that women tend to kind of drop out of sport earlier in school life, certainly, and then later on. I think I think it's possibly good to have kind of a role model and somebody to be inspirational. But I'm not that hung up about kind of how how people view me. For me, I do it for myself. When I went to Barkley, I wasn't doing it to be the first woman to do it. I was doing it because I was genuinely interested whether I could get round, because it was like a challenge. Just like any of the men that are signed up for it, you just want to know whether you can do it. So that's why I personally went there for myself. I mean, I think if a woman does it and other women are inspired by it, then that'll be a positive thing. But I was just going there to kind of challenge myself, really. Somebody's asked, for a newbie, the one key thing that you have to get right. I honestly don't think you can answer that question for Barkley, because I think I really think this is a race where there's so many variables. I guess if there was one thing that I had to say, I would say it was like getting around the navigation. So you'd have to either be confident to do it or be running with someone. But there are sections that, even if you're a good navigator, I think if you're doing it on your own the first time, then there'll be challenges. Let's just put it that way. So somebody's asked, how do I follow the Barkley Marathon and what are the race plans I have? Well, I'm running the UTMB at the end of the year, and it's a totally different race, isn't it? But I guess I've sort of always said that I wanted to, at some point, I've run it once before in 2016, and I did it on the back of a really big season. I ran the 3 big rounds and I don't know, the world trail running kind of ultra championships and several other things. And I didn't put any kind of specific training into it, and just ran it really tired. And so I just sort of always thought it'd be good to kind of one day go and train for it and see what I could do, just because it's so competitive, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of such a big media kind of hyped up thing, but it actually is also a really great atmosphere. So I think it's the sort of thing you do, or at least for me, I would do a few times in my life, maybe. So yeah, I'm going to do that this year. And I also have other kind of races that I just love doing that are really low key, small races. Well, comparatively to these things in the UK, I love Wasdale Fell Race, and that's I think one of the best races in the world, but it's really low key. So I'm going to do races like that as well over the summer. And we'll see what else. We'll see if I maybe get selected for anything, or we'll see what happens other than that. Do I have any FKT plans? I don't know. I might have one kind of in the brewing, but if so, it'll be kind of a little bit different. So maybe not quite what people would expect. Well, yeah. So possibly something. Somebody's actually asked about the map. The map, let's just say it's not great. And somebody's asked that, they said that they're an orienteer and that maybe it's not an orienteering map. Let's just say in from the UK, we're used to Ordnance Survey maps to use on the hills. I mean, this is don't expect a lot of the things that I was looking for, even a river, for example, that I was beside wasn't marked on the map. So you have to kind of, the map is one of the big challenges in terms of navigation. If I'd been allowed a GPS tech watch, do you think it would have made any difference? Well, only if you had the trace and you were following it exactly. I mean, yeah, I mean, I would, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the same race if you had a GPS watch. It'd be something totally different. So, I actually read the report from the first finisher of Barkley, and he said that I think at that time he said mentioned somebody having a GPS watch, so it must have been maybe allowed at the time way back then. But he said that it didn't work because of the hills or the woods or something. So maybe it wouldn't even work if you did have it. I don't know. Um, Somebody's asked, what other fellow ultra runners do I find inspirational, look up to, follow their careers? I mean, like, I'm inspired by kind of, I mean, I have lots of friends in ultra running and sky running and kind of teammates from the GB team and that sort of thing. I mean, I find all of them inspirational. My coach, Damien Hall, I find inspirational, John Kelly, all the people, and also all the old timers, that have set the kind of, the records way back in the kind of era of Martin Stone on the hills and things like, they're all kind of inspirational. But I feel like the most inspirational people for me, and I've said this before, but I'll repeat it, are kind of the people at the back of the field at races, especially multi-day races, because they're out the longest every day. They're chasing the cutoffs every day. They tend to end up, like, for those reasons, having the worst injuries, the worst blisters. They spend half the night in the kind of tent, having the medical tent, having their blisters sorted out, and then they hobble out at the start of the next day. And if you're leading the race, you like maybe on the Dragon's Back, you'll be running for 8 hours a day and then have the rest of the time to sit around and eat. Whereas the people at the back of the field, honestly, are the real heroes. So those, I think, people that are the most inspirational. Somebody's asked here about Barkley. Will I do it again? Well, I've sort of answered that question already, and I think I'd like to go back if Laz will have me back. So I think, let's see if we've got, let's see. Somebody's asked, how do my previous races and challenges help me prepare for the Barkley? Well, I think, I'm kind of used to doing long things, long runs, so that I kind of was used to kind of the challenges that come with that. The fact that once you've been running for a certain period of time, you start wanting to eat as much, and kind of that side of things. I'm prepared. I just spent lots of time on the hills, kind of prepared for the changing weather, and I think that really helped, because when the weather was bad on Loop 2, I think it seems like, it sounds from blogs and things like every year lots of people drop out of Barkley because the weather changes quite quickly in that kind of, in the park, in that area, and I think people get cold because they've not got enough kit with them. So I had quite a big bag, maybe it was heavier than other people were carrying, but it did mean that when it got bad weather, then I had loads of clothes to put on, because I've had quite a lot of experience in the mountains and know what it's like to get too cold. It's so easy to get cold, isn't it, when you get wet and it's windy? So I think that kind of helped me a lot in kind of previous experiences. And I'd done things like last year, I ran things like I ran the Cairngorm round, which is it's called the Rigby round, which is the lesser known sort of 24-hour running round, one of the lesser known ones in the UK. It's like the Bob Graham, the Paddy Buckley, the Charlie Ramsey round, but it's in the Cairngorms, and the kind of ethos behind it is that you run it solo and unsupported, and that you run it on site ideally, so not having run the route before. So I did that, and I did it in fog, and that really gave me the confidence to do, because I navigated a lot of it just on a compass bearing. And actually, I guess it probably went better than some of the sections later on at Barkley, but that gave me the confidence that I could do that if I kind of put my mind to it. So let's see if there's so somebody's asked about training orienteering to this extent, and as I've kind of mentioned, I do have experience navigating in the hills just from being a fell runner and doing mountain marathons and things. I didn't actually do that much training for the kind of nav side of things at Barkley, and I do think that if I focus on that quite a lot over the next year, that might help a bit, but it also might not help that much because there's kind of there's other aspects of this course that make it's not just about following a map. That's all I'm going to say on that. So I think somebody's asked, what methods do you use to manage pre-competition excitement and maintain focus throughout the race? That's an interesting question. So with Barkley, you don't actually know what time it's going to start at, which was, sorry, the printers decided to start printing. Audrey it wouldn't print all day. So yeah, with Barkley, you don't know what time it's going to start at. So I actually went to bed in the evening, sort of thinking potentially I was going to get woken up at midnight, any time from midnight, by the sound of the conch. And at that point, you've got an hour till the race starts. And luckily, I was kind of still on UK time, so I didn't find it too difficult to actually go to sleep in the evening. And that was a real advantage because I guess I was already quite tired. And actually, I sort of managed to sleep reasonably through the night. I did, kind of periodically wake up, and the minute you sort of allowed yourself to think that the conch might blow any moment, then you would be wide awake. But I guess I was trying to use some sort of mindfulness to not think about that. So yeah, I can imagine that you could easily lose a whole night of sleep before the race. And I know that's been a problem for lots of people in the past. But I was really lucky because I got kind of most of a night's sleep before the race, which meant that this year was probably the year to try and finish the 5 loops because you kind of were well rested. Whereas other years you might end up starting at 1 a.m, in which case you'd have kind of already lost a night's sleep when you set off. So yeah, unfortunately, hopefully maybe it won't start in the middle of the night next year if I go back. So I think somebody's asked, had you and John Kelly compared notes? Like John Kelly was like John Kelly's been really great in terms of Barkley, and like obviously he's local, so he even offered kind of like anything that needed delivering to deliver it to his house, and I've supported him on things before and so on. But I've kind of, as I've said, I didn't really ask that much to anybody that's been there before because I didn't really know how much was the done thing. I asked a little bit about the briars and things like that. But in the event, I actually ran the first loop just in socks and 3/4 lengths and got pretty scratched. But so I didn't, even particularly use the information that I got from people about that. So I think that's kind of those questions, right? I might go down to the end and I might just look at some of the questions that people have also sent me before this. Okay. Okay, so somebody's asked, I remember seeing John Kelly finish wrapped in carrier bags. Is it easy to make big kit mistakes? I think I sort of mentioned that I think people often go out at Barkley with not that much kit, and that's partly because it can be like, it was really warm the first day. Like I was easily warm enough in my t-shirt and 3/4 lengths. I could have easily been running in shorts. And I think John Kelly sort of commented that it was sweating on the first day, and then like at the night it started raining and got cold, and the temperature differences. I think one year, like maybe a few years ago, it went from 30 degrees Celsius in the day to -10 at night. Like there's a massive drop. So I think in terms of making kit mistakes, it's not even so much mistakes, it's that you're ready for the weather that you've got, and then the weather can change quite dramatically. So I think maybe that's the big kind of take home point, is that you have to almost be prepared for all seasons in potentially in the course of one loop. So I think that's why he ended up wearing bags. As far as I've kind of understood, it was because he didn't really have a waterproof, so he wore a bag, which is innovative. It's probably saved his race. So somebody's asked about innovate, and actually somebody's asked about footwear choices, and somebody asked in another question about my favorite piece of kit. So I guess if I had to say one piece of kit, it would be shoes, because I think just generally for running, that's the main thing you actually need, isn't it? Shoes. I wore Innovate shoes before I started being an ambassador for them anyway. So it was just kind of a case of then labeling myself, I guess, as being, I was already doing it, so I was happy to carry on doing it. And my favorite shoes, I guess, for kind of proper fell races in the UK, that kind of slidey, wet, muddy fell races, would be Mud Claws. And they're what I wore on Barkley, and they were good. Yeah. The only, the reason that I was in places I slipped, but the reason for that is anybody would have slipped, in the sense that it was pretty, like super wet and super muddy, and it was pretty much impossible. It didn't matter what you're wearing on your feet. You'd have needed I don't know, super long spikes or something to stay stood up. And so it was actually safer just to sit down and slide on at times on the second loop. And we did that actually. Me and Thomas just slid down one long section just on our bottoms, and my waterproof trousers are like they're kind of caked in mud at the bottom, and then they were like really heavy, so they kept kind of coming off, sliding down, so you were like constantly pulling your trousers up. But that's just because they were covered, like really thickly covered in mud. I looked like one of my children, after a good day at grandma's house, like yeah, completely caked in mud. So that would be my kind of kit, would be shoes, and I would choose the same shoes again next time. In fact, I wore the same pair of shoes for the 3 loops, and they were totally great. Yeah, I had a spare pair with me, but I had no need to change them. And I also didn't. Somebody asked in another question, I think it was on the sent in questions, about blisters. I actually didn't get any blisters at all on Barkley, not a single blister. I generally not had much problems with blisters on the spine. I just had one on each foot between the big toe and the next toe, and I think that's probably where they develop, because stuff gets into your feet. I thought about wearing gaiters for Barkley, and I didn't, because I just thought they'd probably end up just annoying me, and they probably would have come off anyway, because there's like lots of stuff that gets stuck to your foot and so on. So I didn't wear them. I'm glad I didn't wear them. There wasn't that much stuff that went in my shoe. So I think, if I'd done 2 more loops, I might have had a couple of blisters, but nothing much. I think maybe it helps that I did lots of barefoot walking as a kid, and I spend lots of time running, and my feet are just used to it, and they've got pretty tough and firm. So that may be those reasons. Somebody's asked about taking up other sports as cross training, and whether I have actually any time for that. Well, actually, I do. I cycle so I work part-time. I do some work as a vet, and then I also do work as doing research. And for that, I drop the children at nursery and then cycle into the kind of the 4 or 5 miles into town and back. And so I do like a reasonable amount of cycling, and sometimes I cycle all the way from home, which is sort of like a 20-25 mile round trip to the lab. So I kind of do cycling, and then I do some open water swimming as well as cross training, and then we obviously do some hiking as a family. So my daughter, like this summer, the summer gone, she's my 4-year-old daughter's she's like climbing Munros. So so we kind of, they're very slow hikes, but we already managed to go hiking as a family. So I think somebody asked a question about that on the kind of sent in one, so I can touch on that in a minute as well. Somebody asked if I feel fully recovered. Like injury wise, I had a bit of a sore knee, but that's gone now. So I don't feel injured at all. I think I feel a bit tired still. So I kind of was a bit jet lagged when I got back like a week ago. It was a week and a day ago, Sunday. But then I worked a week on clinics. So I was on clinics all of last week, apart from the Monday. So it's sort of doing a bit of that on kind of paperwork over the weekend. So now I feel like this week's a bit easier because I'm on research. So I feel a bit tired basically still, but not injured. Somebody asked about my pack. Were there any kit or fueling items you wished you'd had? Honestly, no. I guess the only thing was I broke a pole on loop 1 and I broke one on loop 2 as well. And so from like quite early on in loop 2, I only had one pole, and I found the poles quite useful. So I picked up a stick at one point and just used the stick instead. But I think if I was to do it again, I might take a spare pole with me when I ran. I don't know. I've got to think about that. I also broke a compass. So I was glad that I had a spare compass with me, because that would be a disaster if you had no compass. So maybe I'll take 2 next time as spares. Somebody asked about skills throughout my running life that have transferred to other work areas. I think I've said often that I think what I do as running is really good for me in other areas. And I think that's, I guess if you were to say a skill, then maybe just the self-confidence and the belief that you kind of gain from doing things like Barkley, kind of where you're sort of on your own and you have to get yourself out of the messes that you've created yourself. And then once you do it, then that gives you kind of a certain confidence and self-belief. So I think that's good running wise, and running just generally makes me happy, and also de-stresses me. This my clinical job certainly could be quite stressful, so I think it's good to have that, and it also makes me a better mum. I've said that lots of times, and I honestly think it's good. And then somebody's asked about expectation from a coach and what they've helped with. I think for me, like I work really well with Damien, I think, because he's sort of partly a friend. Well, he is he's definitely a friend, but so that's kind of part of the advantage of him as a coach. So he kind of gets it. He's also obviously got kids, so he kind of gets that side of things and the kind of the other challenges on my time. But the main thing that, like, one of the best things about kind of for me about having a coach is that I don't really have to think about it. So like I just do what's to one extent. But the main thing is that when I'm really busy, like I am at the moment with small children and a job, full-time job and so on, it's just getting out and doing the miles and the kind of time out. I think that if I hadn't had like a set thing that was set out beforehand of what I was supposed to do, I would never have done as much training for Barkley. Because it was really hard actually at times to get out and do it. If I knew that I had to do that many kind of miles with that much kind of ascent, I think if I hadn't had that written down that I was supposed to be doing that, then it would have been really easy to say, oh, I'm just too tired, or there's too much stuff going on and I can't fit it in. So for me, it's like that, being accountable to somebody and having it written out is the biggest advantage of having a coach, by far. And also kind of, he always, like, we had strength training built into my training plan as well, so that also probably wouldn't have happened if that hadn't been the case. So somebody asked what facilities on the kind of interlupal period. My husband and I just hired a car. We literally had the smallest car that we saw in America. It was like, so we had this little car, and we had our like 2-man tent. And that's what our facilities were on interlupal periods. And as I say, we kind of once we weren't at the race, we had an Airbnb booked with friends, Carol Morgan and Simon Franklin. So that was really good to kind of be there with friends. And somebody's asked about what inspired me to sign up for Barkley. Like why do a race when you kind of don't know if you're going to finish? Well, I think that's definitely, I think that's what's your why versus picking. Yeah. Well, I think it's like, it's really exciting to do a race if you don't know whether you can finish it, because it's that whole unknown of kind of the challenge of it. It's like a red rag to a bull, like, it's really unlikely that you can finish, but it's not impossible. And then when you know that, you kind of, it's the challenge of it that makes it exciting. And because you know that you're going to kind of, that you're going to reach at some point that wall of like, of not being able to do anymore. And in some ways that's kind of where you really, like, that's where you really come like face to face with life, like that's where it all, that's where you kind of stop living passively, and it's really like, it's real and memorable. And that's when you sort of feel like you've there. How do I fit in all the training with work and family? It's actually, and so I'll answer this question because somebody asked that in the kind of questions beforehand, is how I get out for a run with the kids around. And I was sort of thinking about it because it is hard, and sometimes it's been super hard. So I feel like with both my children, my 4-year-old and my now 20-month-old, they've kind of gone through a period of like struggling to accept me going out of the door in the morning. But to some extent, I feel like I've sort of, with both of them, went through a short period of time where it was quite difficult. Like they cried when I left, and I carried on doing it because they would generally just cry. I mean, it was really hard for me to do it, but they would generally just cry for a short period, and they were totally happy. A bit like, I guess, might be where the first time they start a nursery or something, and they very quickly got used to it. So then, once it was routine, it was fine. And I think in the long term, that's better, that they kind of know that mum goes out for a run in the morning and that it's normal and it's routine. I guess things that helped were that I always went in the morning. So quite often they would actually be asleep. So as I mentioned before, all three, my husband and the 2 children, often all together in our bed. And then I could sneak out when they were still asleep. So that was like the ideal situation. But if not, then like mornings tended to be kind of easier because the kids are less clingy and kind of just generally like well kind of rested. So that's why I run in the mornings. But it's not always been easy to get out. I just say that it's like, I felt like it was important for everybody for me to do that. So I kind of persisted even when there were hard times. Has Moss forgiven me for the pre-Barkley Hill repeats? So Moss is the border collie. I think somebody commented, or even the dog was tired. I mean, to some extent, maybe he was a little bit tired, but our dog is used to running like sometimes he would train hard with me and my husband. Like he runs a lot of miles. I'm guessing he runs like more, sometimes multiple 100 miles a week because he does a lot of running around us. I'm not sure how tired he was, but he definitely thought it was a stupid activity running up and down the same hill 22 times. And he's pretty smart, so that's why he kind of decided that he was going to stop going to the top and stop going to the bottom. He also likes to be at the front, so he quickly worked out that if I went down to the bottom, I was only going to turn around and then he would be at the front again. So yeah, I think he's forgiven me. Am I a fan of training on empty, or do I eat before I run? Actually, I always used to just run on empty pretty much until I had kids, and then when I was breastfeeding, I couldn't do that anymore. Like I had to eat something, and now I eat something, and I feel like now that I've kind of read more about it and I guess been educated a bit more, it seems like certainly if you're going to do anything longer or harder, you should eat before you run, especially as a woman. So I think probably I just listened to my body, and I guess I probably listened to what it was telling me when I was breastfeeding that I needed to eat before I ran. And now I generally eat something, but it can just be like a piece of toast, and I can run pretty much like straight away. So like have a toast and cup of tea or something like that. So I think those are kind of, and so in terms of questioning about kind of fitting things in, I tend to run. I get up at 5 a.m. and run then. For Barkley, there are a few mornings when I got up even earlier. So at the weekends, sometimes like the longest run I did the weekend, I think it was like 7.5 hours or something. And I needed to be back by, I don't know, before lunch. So I got up, I think, at 3 and started running at 4, which was pretty hard because it was like really bad weather. So I was like in a gale and driving rain at 4 a.m. And it wasn't very enjoyable. But most of the time I get up at about 5 to run. And that's the way that I can guarantee that I'm going to be able to do it. Because if I leave it till later on, there's invariably something that gets in the way, and the kids are clingy, as I say, if I try and go in the evening, and just doesn't work with bedtime and bath time. And if I'm on clinics, I always have paperwork to do in the evenings as well. So running in the morning is the way to go. And also kind of other things that we fit in as a family are things like going hiking, as I kind of mentioned with the Munros. So I think those are the questions. Hopefully I've answered people's questions there. I'm going to see if I can see some of the questions that I got, if there's any. I think somebody's asked about, I think I gave my answer about the book title, those things. So somebody's asked, on the second loop in the dark, freezing rain and fog, did I ever feel like kind of frightened, or was I out of my depth? I actually wondered whether that would happen, because I've not really done much running in the woods at the night. I've done lots of running on my own in night, but not in the woods. I guess I never kind of panicked because I wondered whether that might happen, but I wasn't like that at all. I was pretty pleased to see Thomas Dunkerbeck when we kind of joined up on loop 2, because he was slightly on the wrong line. He was pleased to see me when he saw my head torch, and I was pleased to see him because I'd sort of been messing around trying to work out the line off the mountain, and then I saw a light below me. So I can't, we were really pleased to see one another. But it wasn't like I wasn't frightened. I was just sort of, just wishing for a bit of human company at that point. So that was good. When I go out on my own in the dark in the mornings, do I run on my own or with a mate? I'm really lucky. I have the dog. So I guess he's always my running mate. But I also live in kind of quite a remote area. So we're about 40 minutes out of Edinburgh. I'm not on Strava, partly because I don't want kind of put my routine routes on there for everybody to see publicly. But I don't feel frightened when I run. I just run to the hills and around in the hills and locally. But as I say, it's quite a remote area. I feel like you'd have to kind of be planning to do something to me to kind of to be waiting, and So I don't feel frightened about running on my own in the mornings, but I do have moss. If I had any time of the day to train, what time would I train? I actually I do love training in the mornings. I think I would go a bit later. In winter, I'd go kind of around the time of dawn would be nice. But in the summer, getting up at 5 is gorgeous because you get this kind of this amazing period before the day really starts, where can the world's so fresh and beautiful and clean. Yeah, it's great, and see sunrise. So I do like running in the mornings. I think the main challenge with that is just that if you're a bit sleep deprived, then it's just hard getting out of bed. But I always find that once I'm out of bed, it helps. And in terms of tips for anyone kind of getting out in the early morning, one would be that I have all my kit ready the night before. So I just get up and literally have it all ready, including the headlight and the watch and everything. And it just means that it means I'm not trying to find the kit in the bedroom when the kids are asleep, because then if you wake them up, then that's obviously really not ideal. But it also means that you just can almost do it in your sleep, and then you get out of the door, and once you're running, you sort of wake up. There you go. Yeah, so somebody's pointed out dogs are the best bodyguards. Yeah. Yeah. Our dog's a big softie, but I think he would protect me if there was something. Yeah. He's very friendly. He's very friendly, our dog. Did a lot of training, so I'll try and get. So somebody asked if I have anybody I could train with. I guess I do sometimes train with a work colleague, and actually that's another useful tip for people is that if you're kind of struggling with motivation, then I think arranging to go out with a friend and kind of setting a time in the morning and a place that you're meeting means that you'll have to go, because you kind of don't want to let them down if they're going to be there at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m, whatever time they're going for. Right, so there's some questions there. So somebody's asked about kind of unique factors of navigation hard at Barkley. I've kind of mentioned the forest and the fog, because the forest does mean that you can't kind of use the lie of the land around you. And I've mentioned the map, which is really not great. So those would kind of all be things. And then there's lots of places where it just helps to know the best line. And it's not like you can kind of show that on the map. That's just something that, comes with experience. Toughest point in the race. I guess the toughest point was probably right at the end, when I had like half an hour and suddenly realized I was actually following the wrong stream, and I had this moment of complete sort of panic and thinking, that's it, it's all over, all this effort. And then I guess I'm quite proud of the fact that at that point I was like, no, can't give up. And then I just started running. I was running faster, probably faster than I ran in the rest of the race the entire time. I was running uphill. And I was so determined that I was going to get back. And then I hit these like mountain laurels, which are like rhododendrons, and they sort of grabbed onto me and wouldn't let me through. And I was like shaking them like this to try and get through. And then I literally got on the floor and like did like the belly crawl. And then I was just doing that for a really long time, because they just weren't ending. Yeah, it was just balmy the last half hour. So I think that was the hardest bit. Somebody's asked, how long do I give myself to recover? Like, I guess I kind of gave myself 7 days off, then did a bit of kind of a test run with me and Damien. And then it's just depending on how I'm feeling. So I had a bit of a sore knee, so I left it for a few more days. So now I'm going to kind of start training again this week, but it's going to be really easy. So we'll kind of build up from there. What did I eat on the trail? Somebody's asked. On the trail, kind of the usual stuff that I eat. I tend to eat normal food. So I had like bars, like kind of cereal type bars. I'd made some of my own flapjack. I had some chocolate bars. I had sandwiches. I had some nuts. I had some sweets. Yeah, kind of normal food. And then when I got into the checkpoint, I had like a pasta and some porridge. I had rice puddings. Yeah, those kind of things. Yep. So did I have fun? Somebody's asked. I did actually have fun. I had fun. There were times of it when I was genuinely having genuine fun, like type 1 fun, even at the time. There were times of it when I have to say it wasn't that much fun at the time, but now looking back, it's fun. So yeah. And the bits that were bad, I've sort of almost forgotten, like how the bits that were unpleasant, they already seem kind of fun in retrospect. So it's a bit, I couldn't compare it to other experiences in life which aren't that much fun at the time, but afterwards you quickly forget. Yeah, anybody with children might guess what I'm thinking of. So then I think, let's see, any tips for handling the fatigue? Oh, that's nice of you. I don't know. I guess I probably have quite good training for kind of the sleep deprivation aspect just at home with small children. And I guess I've always been quite good at managing without that much sleep. They used to call me the Duracell bunny at university, probably for a reason. Do I train power walking? That's a really good question. Like I have genuinely said, like I sort of said in in past years, that for example, for the big rounds like Bob Graham and stuff, I think going on a hiking trip in big mountains is really good training for that sort of thing. And I imagine it would be for Barkley. And to be honest, if I could do that, if I could go on like a big hiking trip a few weeks, a few weeks before, maybe like 3 weeks before Barkley, and do like big ascent at altitude with a pack, I think that would be like a really good training for Barkley. But the problem is at the time of year, it's just where to go because lots of mountains kind of in Europe would be covered in snow. So that's something that I guess I've thought I've considered. I'm just not really sure where you'd go. Certainly to get altitude, but maybe like go somewhere warm and just get the ascent. So I've thought about that. So yeah, let's see. There's probably just time for a few more questions. Somebody's asked me if I could design the perfect race for me, what would it look like, and who would I race against? There was a race called L's 2900, and I don't think it exists anymore. I ran it when it did. It's a pairs event. It's only for like 25 pairs or something. It has this fantastic feature that it's in Andorra. You hike up to a kind of a mountain hut. You all have dinner there together in a couple of sittings because the hut's really small. And then it's such a low key race. The race organizer just like you all walk outside at midnight and start. And it's like 70 kilometers and 7,000 meters of ascent. It's super technical. It's all like you nav the whole thing. And there's this like great ridge at the end. And I honestly think that was my perfect race. I would love it to run again. And if I was going to race it against kind of ladies, I probably think the people that would love it would be people like Emily Fosberg. I think Hilary Girardi would love it, and like Ruth Croft maybe. So yeah, those kind of ladies. But as I say, you run it in pairs, so yeah, I would love that race to happen again. Somebody has written which race winner's been the most unexpected and why. I don't know. I'm surprised every time I win something and delighted. I guess Spine was kind of exciting because it was a big thing that I won outright. So that was exciting from that point of view. So what's been my lowest moment in an event and how did I get out of it? I think I mentioned the UTMB before. I had a pretty low moment at the kind of the hottest point where there's that horrible long valley along the road in the UTMB. And then you get to Champelac and I was super hot and loads of people dropped out. And what I did at that point was I got in the lake and went for a swim, which I think is really not like standard for people to do. But it worked and I felt loads better. And I carried on running and loads of people dropped out. So I moved up loads of places just at that one checkpoint. So that was probably a pretty bad point. I also had a really low point in that L's 2900 race because me and Conrad were both ill when we ran it. And we nearly dropped out actually before the last few summits. Yeah. And then we met a friend that had gone to support us and he was like, no, you can't drop out. And I'm so glad we met him. So we finished it and yeah, it was good. It was good to do that. How did the kids cope without us for a week? Yeah, they were super happy to see us back. I felt a bit bad because the little list one doesn't really understand yet. And he kind of gave me, he wouldn't really kind of come to me for the first 10 minutes that we walked in the door and then he wouldn't leave me alone. He's actually still breastfeeding, so he is back to doing that again now, despite my absence for a week. So yeah, I think he's over my absence now. He's just glad to have mum back. And somebody's asked, did I ever get judged by others for running when I was kind of as a new mother? And how did I respond? I think most people have been really supportive, actually. I guess I've been really lucky. I remember with Rowan, at one point, I was kind of started trying to train with the baby. So I'd had the baby parked in the middle of this kind of grassy area and I was doing I was doing speed intervals around her in circles and these older ladies came past and were clearly disapproving that I wasn't stood holding the buggy, despite the fact that I could see her the whole time. But apart from that occasion, I can't really think of many. Generally, people have been very supportive. I think people have been a bit surprised. For example, when I ran hill race 10 days before Rowan was born. I think the marshals there were kind of glad to see the back of me when I got to the kind of summit and set off back down the hill again, because I didn't want to kind of be delivering a baby on the summit of the hill. But generally people, like in terms of support, people have been very, very supportive. So yes. And then somebody's asked about how easy is it hiking with young children, any tips? And I guess from our point of view as a family, we started doing the Munros with my daughter, who's now 4. So she was 3 when she started. And she did 6 last summer, and each one was like a full day outing with a lot of picnics and a lot of stories. And sometimes we did it with friends, with their dogs and their children. And honestly, it's been like, it's totally sort of, it's really great. I'm really excited about doing the Munros now in this kind of slow, steady way. And she's excited about it. And we're going to get a map for the wall to put pinpoints on. So I think having something like that, if you can do it with friends and have a kind of focus, getting to a summit's always a really good thing. And we almost always go for, like, when we go on these, we went for a trip for a week and did a Munro every other day, and the other day we went to a cafe and went for a short walk into a cafe. So kind of not doing too much, maybe spacing out every day with a cafe. And somebody's asked about what I'm training for next. Well, I've just kind of signed me and my brother up, hopefully, the Scottish Islands Peaks boat race. So he lives in New York, so he's going to have to train pretty hard up and down, I don't know, beside the river or something, to get his ascent in before that. So maybe I guess I'm training for that. I'm maybe running the Yorkshire 3 Peaks race at the end of April as well. So I guess that would be the next thing that I'm training for. And I think that might be kind of getting to the end of the questions. I'll have a quick look through. Hopefully I've not missed. If anybody's here and I'm not answering your question, do you want to just add it to the chat? That would probably be the quickest way of me working this out. Somebody's written, my wife is currently pregnant, and any tips for getting back to running after having a baby? I guess tips would be to kind of give it time. It takes 9 months to grow a baby. It takes 9 months to kind of, at least that, probably to get back to you, and as your body for it to kind of recover. You're feeding another baby, another person. I guess tips would be to kind of, if you can, go and see a postnatal physio, because it is really kind of a specialist thing, I think. And at least when I've had my babies, it's not been kind of on the NHS to have like a routine pelvic floor check and that sort of thing. So I think that was really, really useful for me and gave me lots of exercises to work on. Pelvic floor and core and that sort of thing. So that would be my tip. And just giving it time and being, And then once you've kind of baby 6 months, you can do buggy running with a baby as well. So like get them involved in park runs with you and stuff. So those would be good things. And just, I think becoming a parent has made me a stronger athlete. Somebody's asked. I think being a parent has kind of changed my relationship with running, because I think it's not as important as it was before I had kids, because they are the most important thing. But it has sort of made it different, because it's made it kind of even more precious in terms of being the only time that's just mine. It's kind of changed. The relationship's changed, and in some ways, like, races have changed, because they, if it goes badly, it's you kind of, you come back to the kids, and ultimately kind of puts it all in perspective. It's not really, you're just kind of doing it for fun. I mean, we're just very fortunate to be able to kind of play it this, it's for fun. I guess I'm privileged in that way as well, that I have a career. So running is just a hobby. And how do I keep going during a race when things get really tough and my body feels like it can't go on? Any techniques or mantras? I guess my tip would just be, just keep eating, keep moving, try not to stop, because you lose a lot of time if you just kind of start to stop. So just keep going. Try and never pull out of a race at a checkpoint. At least that's kind of was my thing with Barkley. I was like, if I'm going to start with this race, I'm not going to do it at a checkpoint, because you kind of, I think you can often carry on. It's not till you're kind of on the trail that you feel like you can't, like, it's when you really can't go on. You can't really tell that when you're at a checkpoint, because you kind of, it's so comfortable. I guess you could argue that if you're going to pull out, you should do it at checkpoint, because you're in the safest place. So maybe I shouldn't be giving this advice, but I guess, try and keep moving. Don't sit down, and keep eating. And also keep warm. So it's always worth spending the time to stop and like put clothes on. Do that early so you don't get cold. And in terms of mental kind of techniques, sometimes I would think of things that kind of really positive things like my family or the kids, and sometimes I wouldn't think at all. But generally, the experience of having been in that situation before is just really useful because you know that you're just going to get through it and start to feel better soon, because you always go through bad patches in ultra races. So it's kind of an experience thing of just keep going eating, and you'll find that it gets better. So that would be my tips. Somebody asked, how did I train the navigating with a map and compass? Just being a felt. I've got lots of experience of running with a map and compass, just being a felt runner. I think I mentioned before, I think you could do more of that, like to specifically make yourself do more kind of navigation work would probably just to do more orienteering. So I think I might do that. So probably should wind it up now. Just have a quick check through if there's anything else. Somebody's written, what else is on my bucket list running wise? I think so. Hard rock, and then in the UK, in the States as well, like Nolan's 14. It's a challenge that I'd kind of like to do. And then maybe some of the long distance trails, like Appalachian Trail, for example. The thing is, I'm trying to limit how much I fly around the world. So like just flying to Barkley was for me kind of a big decision, because I'm trying to, like lots of, like we all are trying to now reduce our carbon footprints. That's why I didn't apply for Hard Rock this year as well, because maybe I should have done. I probably wouldn't have got a place anyway. So, but those are races that are on my bucket list for anybody asking that question. I think that's probably it there. So I think I'm going to see if there's any more questions. So mostly, most people are yes. I think that's kind of it. So yeah. So if anybody wants to ask anything else, and then do, otherwise I'll just assume that that's good, and I'll say good night to everybody. Okay, well, that's great. Yeah, my tea is cold now. I think it was optimistic to start this with a cup of tea, since nobody else can speak. Oh, Harvey Lewis. All right, that's great to see you up here at the end there. Yeah, and great to see you. I'm assuming it's the Harvey Lewis. Yeah, and hopefully maybe you'll maybe be there again next year. That would be great. Great. Okay. Well, with that, I'm going to say it's been lovely to see all the messages from people. And I'm going to say bye now. So good night, everyone. Oh, just I can't on them yet. I saw Harvey's message about him and Courtney getting lost on lap. I think in the night on lap 2. So I really hope you guys come back next year, and hopefully we'll have a mass finish. I think because as Laz puts it every year, there's got to be one year when that happens. Okay, good stuff. Okay, I'm going to say good night, and bye-bye.